how did you get started? For each of you, like, what was your first, how did you get into the club? How did you get started in the club as well? And then what I'd love to do is just kind of those first meetings, how the club began to get organised. Just your memories and recollections of that.
Yeah, well, I could add a bit there, Tom. I suppose at the time, the game was getting quite popular, and the late Bernard Shapiro would have been involved with the community games team and the juveniles as such. So he was in the process of setting up a juvenile club, and we thought it would be an idea to have a junior club as well, catering for people, obviously adults and so forth. So we set up a committee, had a chat, set up a committee. Tom became the treasurer, Damien the treasurer, Tom the secretary,
yes.
and I was the chairman.
Mm-hmm.
So we moved on from there, and it was a slow beginning, but there was plenty of fellows that were interested in playing, and we took it from there, and gradually the team began to develop, and we had to wait a few years for some success, but it came. I suppose the first successful weekend we had was the weekend of the end of May in 1978, where 3 trophies were won. The first was the Schweppes Cup, won by the junior side. The Richard Quinn was won on that was on the Saturday night. Both of those games were in Turrigan Park, which is now in the DC Park.
Mm-hmm.
And the under-15s capped off a great weekend with the Connacht Cup on the Sunday. So that was our first silverware in it.
Wow. And how, at that time, like, how big was the club, say around the late 70s, where, like, how many teams were running in the club?
I was going to go back a little bit first about the origins of the club. Really, there was, a lot of us were playing for other clubs within the city, successful teams and also very successful school teams, and we were all going to the same school, mostly to the Bish, to be honest, and we always thought, well, wouldn't it be great if we had our own team? Why are you playing with West or you playing with Merview? Why aren't we hang around together, we get the same bus every morning, we should be playing under our own banner. So that was a driving force to get the club going as well. And the one thing I remember is when we were affiliated with the FA, that we had to start off at the lowest down to 2B or whatever it was at the time. And there was no way that you could start off in the Premiership. You had to build yourself up from the lower divisions. So that's just something I recall, that there was a lot of talent in Renmore at the time.
Can I just also say that it was very much groundbreaking, because we were ultra conservative in Renmore and we were very much GAA,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, even if you look at our surrounding areas that we've all lived in, like, it was Hurley, it was GAA, and the notion of a soccer team was, I would say initially maybe not very well received by the immediate neighbours, so it was ever pioneering. Setting up a soccer club was doing that. And when we talk about, Damien made reference there to players playing with other clubs, but in essence the biggest competition in setting up a soccer club and trying to get a soccer team onto the pitch was the competition that came from the GAA clubs, and also at the time a growing rugby support, because we were across the road from Galwegians. So I remember on many occasions when we'd have a team picked on paper, but some of the players understandably were good sports people, they were talented, right? But we were in the dressing room or along a wall, often, the stone wall,
under a wall.
hoping that, exactly, hoping that Damien would turn up or not tell us that he's picked for Galwegians that day, right? Or Billy Quinn, a major player, right? Same way. He was a very talented lad. He had played Galwegians senior at a very young age.
So, I remember.
This is my memory always, because my role mainly in the club at a playing level was very little playing, but a fair bit of organising and following up on the guys to see who's going to be there.
That's right. Sure, you looked after the team there for a couple of years.
Exactly. But that's where it came from. And we used to look, I call it, look over the road from the main Dublin road, where Merview were well established, right? And we on the other side of the road, complete pioneers, weren't we?
Yes, well that's true. It took a while because like the Renmore area was only being developed. It was a few years behind other areas.
Correct.
And therefore it was a natural progression, shall we say. And you just had to wait your time. And then eventually it did come when we'd say the influx of players that were kind of coming to reside in Renmore provided us with the numerous teams, and
but that's where the like of McDarcy and Bernard Chaparro became very important to us, because remember, not giving away our ages. So we set up a club when we were 18 to 20 years of age. And then you were knocking on doors, because we had a membership thing going as well. So we're knocking on die-hard GA doors.
Looking for 50p a household.
But even still, some other things then, back then there was no mobile phone, there was no internet, there was no email.
Absolutely not.
And if I'm not mistaken, and you can correct me, Tom, if I'm wrong, I think the fixtures were done on a weekly basis that time.
Yeah, I was the fixture guy.
So Tom had to go to a meeting
trailer wherever at the time.
On a Monday.
Came back with the list.
And then if you had a game, you had a week to organise getting a team picked and getting word to each individual, be at Malloy's shop if you were travelling away.
But that's why I said to you that even on the day, on the hour, you're in the dressing room.
You could be missing.
Your 2 or 3 players not up yet.
Exactly.
Wow.
So it's all the fun.
Where did you play the games then? What were the pitches that you were using then back in the city?
Where they are at the moment, they're close to the Renmore Road.
Okay.
And there was one pitch there where there now are 2. And as time went on, obviously there was a need for a second pitch, and probably at this stage there's a need for more than a second. But all the matches were there, and it was a kind of a focal point as well, especially for the games on Sunday morning. It was a gathering spot for practically people that were interested in playing in different teams but mightn't be actually on the pitch that particular morning. So there was great stories and great banter going on, and it was a real community thing.
I remember one particular, if you're talking about locally, one particular pitch that actually had the luxury of a dressing room, and that was the one upside Digital.
Yes.
That's right.
Do you remember that?
I do.
Wasn't that kind of going to a new level?
Yes. But Digital had the money to...
And a perfect pitch.
And a perfect pitch.
Yeah.
Exactly. When Digital came to Galway,
no uphill, no downhill.
No,
perfect pitch. With a dressing room.
Exactly, Tom.
That was lovely.
Right.
Yeah, they came to Galway in the early 70s, so to speak. So therefore, they I suppose, set a certain standard for others to follow as well.
And then as regards away games, I always remember one particular place that I was never in my life up to then, and that was Abbeylock.
Yes.
Do you remember Abbeylock? I remember the first time going there. First of all, who's going to drive? Right? America would fit in the car.
Yeah.
And then you got to Abbeylock, which is, with respect to anybody who's from Abbeylock, it didn't have a middle or a beginning or an end to Abbeylock. I think we found the church with the pitch behind it.
Pitch up in the hill, but still the same pitch, I think.
It's not a fact. I'm great abiding members of that.
Yeah.
I was probably stuck into the administration of it at the time and getting the transport.
Yes.
Because I don't know who else Tory were.
Well, I think there's a story with the underage, the juveniles, that Paul Finn put a lot of guys in the back of his lorry and drove them to a Mac somewhere. So that was unique transport, you know. But we had to organise. Cars weren't kind of that plentiful, so to speak. And as the lads mentioned, not too sure who might kind of be there able to play, because between fellas playing hurling, and we'd say rugby. You must remember too that we'd say Renmore initially was part of the parish of Castlegar, so there was always an interest in hurling.
Yeah, exactly.
And that meant that again it meant there wasn't really enough players on some days between the hurling and rugby to maybe make the bare 11. So, but we survived and just kept at it, and you know, eventually more and more people joined and things got easier. But in the early days, collecting money, Damien said, organising the discos, the flag days, but we got enough. We always had enough, you know.
The first set of goalposts, we actually carried them over from, I think it was either the Brothers of Charity or Fahey's Field. There were an old discarded pair left on the ground, but there were the old wooden posts, and I remember it took, I'm saying 10 to 15 guys to bring each one over. Now we initially tried to, there was no Gaelic pitch just opposite the church that time. We initially tried to put posts up there, but we were told where to go very quick. And then we thought about doing the Mara Drive. There's a big green area there, and we were ran out of there as well. So we eventually came back to where we ended up. And we were very happy.
We were the poor relations of sport.
We were the poor relations
in the area for some time.
And where the pitch is now, was that designated a pitch area when you started there, or did you just set up basically and started?
We just put up the posts.
Okay.
Nobody, I don't ever remember any official person saying
where the pitches are, and we'd say where the Gaelic pitches are. I think there was 4 individual fields making up that total area, owned by the Shaughnessy family and the Nolan family. And the stones were removed, and that gave space for the soccer club, and we set up probably in a more central area. We were pleased to be close to the Renmore Road, where there was a lot of activity, and the pitches where the Gaelic are. The Gaelic people put up their own pitches where they currently are, but so the one pitch that we did have was adequate at the time, and then obviously we developed, and so.
But we had no animosity with the GA. I mean, some of us were actually playing a bit of Gaelic as well.
Oh, you've done much well. I should stress that
there was a crossover, but
and a bit like it is now. I mean, the same thing. We've teams playing. Kids playing in all the sports as well.
Yeah, and I suppose, you know, some players that can be good at all games, and everybody's calling on them. So that will hardly change, you know.
Oh yeah. Well, even you see with a lot of the smaller kids now, like actually the fact they play GAA is brilliant because it makes them physical, fit, tough players as well, which is excellent.
And then the way the Gaelic has gone, it's all drills and using space, like, which is, you know, part of the soccer game.
Yeah. Well, we've Jack Hastings now is one of the parents in the club, and he comes down to our sessions and just you know, great insights and guidance, and he brings the GAA.
Well, he's on the Galway Senior
That's
Hurling
right.
so therefore you bring a lot of knowledge from there, you know.
Absolutely that. And then in those early years, like the running of the club, who else was involved in that? So obviously yourselves had an important footprint. Bernard was there as well. Was there anyone else though that was kind of involved in the other officer positions, and like who were the other kind of notable names?
Wasn't Paul involved?
Not on the admin side that I recall, Tom, but I would have said it was us 3 at the very beginning. And we used to meet alternatively in our houses, because we're actually, the 3 houses are right beside each other. And we'd just meet there on a Monday or a Tuesday night in the front office, front room in each house, and do a little bit of business. And at the time, Tom, I'm sure you don't have the records, but you used to take notes, I remember.
I remember you having the book, Tom.
So we have that book.
And we'd be assigned.
I think, Tony, you have a book or two, have you? No?
There was a book that I gave to another person, just to see if they could kind of double check on, you know, tell us a bit about it. And I didn't hear anything back. But talking about other people that were involved, we'd say we were there the initial few years, and I was there right into the 80s and so forth. Other people did come in. You had the late Seamus Heavey, acted as treasurer for a few years, and there was another guy then. Can't think of his name now. He acted as secretary as well after you left town. He was down in the park, and there was a few other guys came, and they did various jobs.
It's an age thing as well. You must remember that the founding of the club were at a certain age.
He would have moved out to Renmore.
Tony was maybe 21, Tom was 19, so we're on the younger side.
Because John Cobb would have had a role as well.
Yes,
John's that little bit younger than us.
Exactly. John played a part.
The name I should have mentioned there about taking over the secretary's role, Noel Costello. Noel lived down in Renmore Park and did a lot of work. And I think he moved out of Galway then for work-wise, and I think he went to Cork. So he did his bit, and there was other guys that came on board as well,
And I think, because actually one of the windows we're struggling to get real insight, I think, is the 80s as well. So we've fairly good kind of, and this is really helpful for this kind of that 70s period. And the 90s then, obviously McCaffrey's,
more recent as well.
Yeah, exactly that, and of course Dermot would have been around that as well. But I know there was a lot of good activity in the 80s as well, and that's something we're trying to dig into.
You do have a record, we'd say, from detail of meetings and so forth, for the 80s onwards,
And so I know there's a number of the minutes of the various committee meetings as well, which I think covers parts of the 70s and into the 80s as well, and some from the 90s as well. So we've quite a big trove of stuff, and actually on the night of the 50th we're going to put a little table together and actually put those materials out. As what we'd love to do will be a future thing, is to digitise all that and actually make it available for web so people can see it as well.
Well, as the process moves along, other ideas will come.
That's it. And it's to record the history of the club. That's really the moment as well.
I think in relation to our time there, that we've covered it as such,
And the other thing, Tom, that a small point, but at the time there was one TV channel in the area. There was, if you wanted to see Match of the Day, you had to get on a bus on a Monday night and go out to Salthill, pay to go in and watch a reel of Match of the Day.
Wow.
And there'd be 300 people out in Salthill cheering, even though they knew the results going in, and they might even lose, but when the goal went in, there was a big cheer for every goal that went in.
Yeah.
So soccer was not very visible on the TV, RTE at the time. We didn't have multi-channel, or nobody did. So, and I think, believe it or not, 1966, the World Cup that time had given us all a huge interest in soccer, because they did show that tournament. And we were reading a lot about some of the stars in England at the time, George Best and all those guys.
Johnny Giles started to rise and all that.
Exactly.
That was household names.
That was spurring everything on.
I think as well as that, around that time, we were at an age, some of the younger lads were at an age that you'd start reading the kind of Sunday newspaper, that type of thing, and you'd pick up, and you'd invariably then, maybe the following week, check on how a guy, we say, performed. And in turn, then you might say, you'd keep an interest in the club. Obviously, it was all the English clubs. Like the first division was the main competition that time. It wasn't a Premiership. It's only a different name, really.
Yeah.
So it just got more sort of media coverage, and people, they picked up. There's more sport than public would have been used to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So something I have been asking everyone is. Just outstanding memories, because everyone sort of has a standout memory of their time of the club. Is there anything that stands out to yourselves where you go, that's something I was particularly proud of, or I look back very fondly on? There's lots of memories I appreciate, but anything that's...
Well, I suppose, when the club with different players. I think the first lad that we'd say signed for Galway United was Tony Sherlock, and he was an excellent player. In fact, he was on the Schweppes Cup team that won in '78, and he was also on the under-17 team that won the Richard Quinn the next night. So he then was followed by Jimmy Nolan, who had a very long innings with Galway United, and also there was a lad, John Nocton. So those guys were probably the players that achieved, we'd say, League of Ireland status, and there was a few others that probably, if they decided to have a go, they would have been capable. But those guys made the grade, and you'd have to take you'd be particularly happy with that.
Oh yeah, and we've seen that. I mean, and even up to this day now, we've had guys who've played for Ireland or have gone on to do the trials over in England. And
when we started that club, there was a Ray Beattie who lives at the end of Renmore Road. He was actually playing League of Ireland with Athlone. Galway didn't have a League of Ireland team.
But Ray was already kind of gone down the path.
Yes.
So
he did come back, but later on in life he came back and played with us.
And I think Ray's, so Niall Beattie is still the secretary of the club.
Not Niall, it was Ray's son.
They're related,
Ray was an exceptional athlete. As the lad said, played League of Ireland, and he also played out half for Galwegians, and which is great. And I'd never say his best sport was Gaelic football. He was brilliant all around.
The man with the big long stride.
Yes. Unbelievable speed.
And I think he won a Connacht schools senior cup with the Bish, and if memory serves me correct, it was a wet day in the sports ground, and that time 0-0 the score into I think it was the second half, and the Bish got a penalty just about inside the Garbally half, and it was the old soggy ball, the leather ball with the lace in it, but Ray took the penalty anyway, and it hit off the crossbar and bounced over. The Bish, I think, won it 3-0. So that was another great, it was a connection to the club, I suppose.
No, absolutely. The other, I'd love to get your thoughts. I mean, when you look at the club now and kind of where it's been, because obviously you guys were, you started it, and now you see kind of Renmore is up. We're like the juniors in the Premier League. We're absolutely kind of head and shoulders up with standing with everyone else. How do you feel about that? Is there any?
I think it's a great achievement.
Pride, very pride. Just walking around here today, and it's fantastic to see.
Not having been here before, I'm absolutely highly impressed. I mean, the amount of effort it must take, and the amount of resources to keep the show on the road. I haven't got in much in discussion with you about the structure, the organisational structure, but it obviously takes a bit, and that's not mentioning money at all. And I'm sure you're well funded in certain ways, but I'm sure you have to back some of that up with your own independent efforts to resource it.
Absolutely,
highly impressed.
Compared to, we'd say, the early days, it has just gathered, made progress, and fair play to everybody involved.
And you would have to feel that maybe it wouldn't have turned out so if we hadn't started 50 years ago.
And that's it.
So I'm sure it would have happened eventually.
And I think looking at some of the other clubs in the town, there's room for growth and